Neon Abyss is a roguelite side-scrolling bullet hell game that was released in July 2020. The game is a very recognizable neon pixel art style that manages to make the game both unique and beautiful while maintaining a retro vibe to it. But can Neon Abyss stand out in a sea of both roguelite and bullet hell games? Hello everyone, I'm Kamara and welcome to the Tavern. This is my second installment of the Should You Play It series. I'm still up in the air on the title of the series, so I'd love to hear your suggestions in the comment below. Before we get started, this is by far the longest script and most work I've ever put into a video. The video took almost 20 hours to make, so please help me out by hitting the like button. If you like the style of content, I'd love it if you could go and subscribe so we can make more of this for you. Thank you so much, and let's get back into the deep dive of the first 3 hours with Neon Abyss and determine if it's good enough to keep you playing and ultimately answer the question, Neon Abyss, should you play it? Quickly, if you're not familiar with roguelike games, it's a game where you restart the game upon each death. However, certain progression systems carry over from run to run, giving you slightly better odds with each run. And a bullet hell game is typically a game that's usually isometric or side-scrolling with many enemies shooting at you while you shoot at them. Now back to Neon Abyss. A quick Google search reveals that Neon Abyss was received well by players and decently by critics. It boasts a 9 out of 10 on Steam and a 76% from Metacritic. It's worth noting that this is not a free game. I did receive my copy free from the Epic Games Store, however this game is roughly $7 to buy on Steam right now. Its normal price is $19.99, and it's also worth noting that this price doesn't include any DLC. If you bought the bundle with all the DLC, the normal price would be $34.99, or you could get it on sale right now for $13.72. Like I said before, I did get my copy as a monthly free game from the Epic Games Store, but here's a look at the Steam store page. You can see we have a good looking trailer, the purchase price for the game and any bundles, and the reviews. If you notice, the recent reviews are mixed and only 62% of the reviews in the last 30 days are positive. I think that's noteworthy, but we'll come back to why that is later. So let's hop into the game and see how it goes. We're first brought into a very standard looking main menu. We can start a new game, continue a save, view our options, or quit. In the bottom left corner, you can see different DLCs that you haven't bought yet. I like this design a lot. It's very straightforward, you know exactly how to get into the game, and the game does advertise its DLC, but not in a very intrusive way. The gameplay options are where we come to our first minor complaint. There are options here that make no sense to a new player, and without the context of the experience in-game, there's no way for a player to know what their preference would be for these options. There should have been a brief summary about what these options do and how they change the game. Video options are pretty limited with no graphical options available except for the resolution full screen toggled on or off. The first screen we come to is difficulty screen and my second minor complaint. As you'll see from the footage here, I attempt to click on the normal difficulty tab thinking that would select it because that would make sense, right? Well, apparently you need to change the difficulty with the A and D keys. This isn't a major deal because you can swap difficulty after you've started, but I didn't know how long it would be before I could do that. So I actually went through the opening dialogue and immediately started a new game to change the difficulty. Now look, I know minor moments like these don't seem like a lot, but for a new player who's already on the fence about your game, you don't want to start stacking up minor annoyances that the player already has to deal with so early on. We already have a confusing options menu and now a difficulty selection screen that doesn't function how common sense would suggest that it should. Starting the game, we see our character sitting on a couch with a shady looking guy in a suit who calls you his friend because you are, quote, the enemy of his enemy. He introduces himself as Hades and tells you that a group of titans took his powers and destroyed your family. He then tells us that he needs good fighters like us to overthrow the Titan's reign. Pours us a drink and tells us if we seek revenge, then we should take the drink. So, we chug the drink and are teleported into what seems to be another dimension. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know because I haven't completed the game, but if I had to guess as to who ends up being the major villain of this game, my money would be on this Hades guy. And I really like that. The game has already started and we've already allied up with a person who seems to be less than trustworthy. Not a bad opening hook game, so let's do it. We fall down into what is the beginning of a new run and the game has officially started. We take control of our character, WASD movement, clicking the mouse shoots our gun, and W or spacebar jumps, a really nice feature to have that option. We immediately find a lucky gold coin that doesn't seem to have any immediate major impact. But moving on to the next room, we get a tutorial of both jumping and jump pads in the game. I love this a lot. The game gives you a gap that you need to use the jump pad to cross, but it never says, hey, jump on this jump pad, but instead gives you context clues to figure it out, and you'll be using these for the rest of the game. I find this to be the best form of tutorial because it gives the player the satisfaction of figuring this out on their own, while simultaneously triggering the thought, oh, wow, this could be really useful in a lot of ways. The player is now excited to experiment with the mechanic instead of just being presented in a text window that annoys them when they just want to get into the game and play. The next room teaches us that we can drop down through the floor, not only platforms, but also drop down through jump pads. This time, there are more indicators around the room. However, the game has you do it multiple times so you can see and feel how this mechanic works. Next, we come up to our first boxes and learn that you can shoot them to break them. Again, the game does not tell you to do this. It just blocks your way and says, hey, okay, player, what will you do now? If you can't tell, I'm a really big fan of this game's opening area so far, and I think this is an expertly crafted tutorial. Now, On to our first taste of combat. You have a crosshair that you can move around with the mouse and you use it to aim where your character will shoot. The first room gives us a mixture of enemies that will melee you and other enemies that can shoot back at you from range. The game is immediately teaching us that different types of enemies will try to hurt you in different ways. Another cool thing is that when you kill an enemy, there's a large blood splatter that forms on the wall behind them. I can't explain why, but it looks really cool in the game with this graphical style. In the next room, we come across our first item. It appears to be a cat, and your first intuition may tell you, oh, this must be a pet or something that's going to help me throughout my run. And you would be wrong. This is a gun. A cat gun. That shoots kittens. If you've seen the Netflix show Centaur World, then you'll probably know why this instantly made me chuckle and like the game a little more. We get a pop-up that tells us that guns also have an active on-use ability that costs diamonds to use. We'll get into why I'm not a really big fan of this mechanic later on. The next room gives us grenades and teaches us not only how to use them, but also that they can be used to destroy certain types of blocks, unlock stone chests, open new pathways, and unlock secret rooms. So we blow up the bricks and get these chests. This brings me to another complaint about the game. I don't really like how grenades work here. Your character can only throw them directly in front of them. You can't aim them in any other way than just positioning your body. I'd like to be able to throw them straight up or airdrop them down into a hole if I want. I know this probably doesn't seem like a big deal, but it actually becomes quite a nuisance and an annoyance and renders them almost useless in combat. One last thing to note about grenades is that they blow up too close to you, they will damage you as well. Next, we learn about eggs. A quick rundown is that eggs hatch during your run and can either be empty or have a pet inside of them, which will have a passive or active ability to aid you in your run. Pets can be killed by enemies, however, I don't believe that they will actively target your pets. It's more like your pets getting caught in the crossfire. Most pets do also have an on-death ability that will activate when they die. We clear one more quick room and it's on to our first boss, George, God of Pills, who looks extremely reminiscent of a floating eye enemy from Final Fantasy. Or maybe he looks more like a doomed cacodemon and a flying eye had a baby. Anyways, the first phase has him flying around shooting 3 projectiles at a time at us. He then comes down and starts hopping back and forth trying to hit us. Phase 2 activates when he becomes enraged and starts jumping around much faster. Throughout the fight, we have to use the 2 jump pads in the room to jump over him and avoid the damage from him hitting us. It's very reminiscent of the Cudgel boss fight from Donkey Kong Country 2. In fact, here's a comparison video for you. So, killing George gives us a golden gem, a heart, and a new power-up that gives us an extra heart. I don't think I mentioned before, but the hit points in this game are very much like the old Zelda games or even Minecraft when you think about it. You have a certain amount of hearts, getting hit takes half a heart away. You can get healing by finding half hearts or full hearts after breaking blocks or killing enemies. You can also get shields that will deplete first before your health does. So, we take the portal left behind after killing George and move on to level 2. On this level, we start seeing some new enemy types and seeing even more ways that they can attack us. Some shoot directly at you, others shoot balls that travel along the floor, others melee, and some even teleport right to you and try to hit you before you can react. There's quite a bit of enemy variety in the game, and some of them will even start acting differently or become more aggressive as you progress through the game. Now we come to an aspect of the game I can't say I'm a big fan of, and that's the RNG. Now wait a second. I can hear all the roguelite enjoyers clenching their fists and getting their pitchforks ready, but please let me explain. I understand that RNG is a large part of pretty much every roguelite. It's part of what makes them so enjoyable. However, I think Neon Abyss takes this idea and stretches it just a bit too far. Essentially, there are just too many aspects of this game that are RNG. First of all, some rooms are locked behind literal slot machines, and you have to keep dumping your coins into them until RNG gives you 3 of a kind and the door opens. But there's also a chance the door just explodes if you don't get a match after a few times. There's also chests that you have to pay 10 coins for a 50% chance of unlocking, and trust me, that does not mean you'll get it on your second try. I dumped over 30 coins into one chest just trying to get it to open. On top of that, there's rooms blocked by slot machines, and inside those rooms are RNG chests that cost the 10 coins per attempt to open. Now keep in mind, coins are pretty important for your run. They're used at the shop to purchase weapons, items, and even sometimes healing. The problem is you'll almost never have enough coins to get what you want from the shop and be able to open the chests. Now I know some people will say that makes it good because you need to be careful with your coins, but in my experience, it never felt very good. I just ended up saving up my coins for the shop, but always having to deal with the thought in the back of my mind that there could have been something really good in that chest. And on top of that, you have to consider the very real possibility of dumping your coins trying to open a chest or door and just getting bad luck, and now you get no shop, no chest, no items, and no fun. I think the best way to manage this, if you want to keep so many layers of RNG stacked on top of RNG, is to either raise the number of coins in the game, because honestly some runs there were very few coins, or you can lower the cost for trying to open doors and chests. Without a doubt, there's a serious imbalance in the ratio of coin sinks and the amount of coins available. On that same kind of note, another complaint I said I'd talk about later is the gem system. Gems in this game are used for opening doors and chests and using your weapon's active ability. However, in the time I played, you could never have more than 5 gems. Doors usually require at least 3 to open, and chests require 2. Depending on the weapon ability, it could cost you 2 or 3 gems to use your weapon ability. So what I did naturally as a player was avoided spending any of my gems on weapon abilities and just use them on doors and chests, because I was always worried I would use an ability and not have enough to open that door or that chest that could have something really good behind it. Again, I know, you could make the argument that this leads to meaningful choices in the game. However, in practice for me, it didn't lead to meaningful choice. It just made me feel like I could never use my active ability or I'd be screwing myself over. Again, you could say that this is a choice and that would be totally fair. But not every opportunity to make a player make a choice is a good opportunity to do that. On that note, I will stop ranting and we can continue the game. We finish fighting through level 2 and come to our second boss, Kimmy, the God of Idols. This is a robot musician that's holding 2 microphones. She alternates between throwing stars at you that you need to dodge and shooting slowly moving musical notes all over the screen that you need to dodge as well. She also goes into an enraged phase at 50% health, but nothing really mechanically changes. It just seems like she does her abilities a little bit faster. Killing her gives us a few more gems, another power-up, and a portal to level 3. While clearing through the different rooms in the level, we come across our first challenge room. Challenge rooms in this game are rooms where you'll defeat between 2 and 4 waves of enemies, and if you survive, you'll get an item once it's complete. This level is where I first come across a chest that requires a key to open it. Keys can drop from enemies, chests, or destroyed blocks, and they are used to open chests and doors. Some doors even have 2 locks on them, but usually doesn't happen until later levels. We also learned that there are 2 types of grenades, your typical grenades that just go boom and give the bad guys boo-boos, and also fire grenades that do less initial damage but leave a damage over time effect on anything caught in the blast. We also start seeing more enemy types and variety at this level. The enemy density in rooms is also starting to ramp up here. The way the game does this ramp up is really good. You've spent the last 2 levels learning how to deal with certain types of enemies, and by this point you've gotten pretty efficient with them. But now you have these new enemies that force you to play a little differently, grouped in with the same enemies you've been fighting before. So right when you start getting a little complacent and feeling really good about the game and your skill, the game throws new enemies at you, so you have to relearn how to deal with these new mechanics that are being thrown on top of the old ones you're already dealing with. Battling through this stage brings us to the next boss, Colt, the God of Guns. Colt is a flying robot with grenade launchers for arms. They'll fly around periodically bouncing his grenades off the wall, and you have to predict where they're going to land and dodge them. Like the previous bosses, at half health, he will also enrage. He'll drop smaller robots on the ground that'll take flight and also start shooting at you. And now, instead of being stationary while launching his grenades, he'll be flying around the room and even coming right up next to you. But killing him gives us another health grade, 2 more golden gems, and a portal to level 4. At this point, we've pretty much talked about most of the different things you'll see in a run, except for the item room. The item room is just a golden room where you'll choose between 2 items. It's worth noting that you don't get a description of what these items do, so it's basically just crossing your fingers or Googling and determining which item to take. When making these videos, I try not to research anything, so throughout this run, I was just crossing my fingers. On this level, we get our first new gun since level 1. It's called the ANIMOSITY. It shoots regular bullets, but has both an active and a passive ability. The passive ability will have it shoot angry sprites when fully charged, and the active ability allows you to become invincible for a few seconds when you use it. But keep in mind, using a weapon's active ability will also use your gems. So, we fight our way over to the next boss, Pideye, God of Trolls. I really don't know how to describe this guy. He kind of looks like a Pokemon to me. I think he's a big rock filled with magma that can separate himself. He starts off the fight with orbs rotating around him that do hurt you if he gets too close, and at 50% health he enrages and separates his body, becomes much faster, and starts chasing you around the arena. The objective is to stay away and dodge him when he gets too close while you finish him off. So killing him brings us to level 5, where the difficulty really starts to ramp up. There are even more new enemies and more of them. Attacks get harder to dodge, levels start to have spikes on the floor that hurt you now, and the game just overall feels like it's starting to take off the kid clubs. This is also the level where I die. Not to an enemy, but to my own stupidity. I guess this is a great opportunity to go ahead and explain that some doors and chests don't require gems or a key to unlock, but rather they do damage to you before they open. So you could say that they require your health to open. You can also convert key doors into damage doors by attacking them. So not paying attention, I accidentally did just that, and before I realized it, I ran right into it. My first run was ended by a door. But upon death, we're brought to the progression tree, and now we finally see what these golden gems that the bosses were dropping are good for. On this tree, you spend your gems to unlock different things that can help you in your run. Unlockables include weapons, secret rooms, new characters, more item drops, and more. There are a lot of these unlockable nodes, showing that the game intends for you to do many runs. We also see a screen with the managers. Essentially, managers are the big bosses at the end of each set of levels. We see that there are 10 managers, so I'm assuming there's around 50 levels in the game for a complete run. But you can also note that this is without any of the DLC, so if that does add more levels and managers, that would make the game even longer. Exiting out of that, we see that we are now in a bar and there's some kind of rave concert going on. There's an elevator to our left and a sign where we can adjust the difficulty. We see that talking to the bartender brings up the progression tree and that you can reset your tree, but it'll cost you 20 of those golden gems. So we head over to the right and interact with the helmet on the wall, and it brings up all the different characters we can unlock. I'm not sure if some of these are DLC or if all of these are unlockable in the base game, but still, it's interesting to see that the different characters have advantages and disadvantages. For example, each character starts with a different amount of hearts, keys, and grenades. Some of them also have special abilities. Moving on, we come across a pillar that we can input a seed into. We interact with it and learn that each specific run generates a seed, and if we want to do that specific run again, we just copy the seed there, and instead of dynamic generation, we'll get the exact same run that we ran before. It also says that we can send the seed to our friends for them to play. This is really cool and not something I think I've seen in other roguelites. So we go check out the elevator next. We head up to the office and find that there's a door we can't get past. I'm sure this will lead to something later on in the game, but it appears we haven't progressed far enough yet, so back to the elevator. Next we head down to the lab, and this is where we can see all the monsters that have shown up in our runs. We can also get rid of monsters that we don't want to see. However, we are warned that if we get rid of too many monsters, then achievements will be disabled. This is an awesome feature. If you don't care about achievement and just want to play through the story or just trying to progress on a later boss, you could disable all the hard monsters that you don't like and just speedrun it super quickly. Next, we head to the basement and see that this is where we can see all the different items and weapons that we've picked up during our run. The same thing applies here. You can disable items you don't like, but if you disable too many of them, achievements will again be disabled. I think this is awesome. You could go through, only enable your favorite weapon and items, and just blast through the game if you're not worried about achievements. This is a really rare case of a developer telling the player, hey, play the game however you want. Obviously, we're not going to count it for achievements, but if you just want to go out and blow up all the easy enemies, then go ahead. The developer is putting the fun of the player over how the game was intended to be played, and that is super rare and very well done. So having explored everything we can in the area, we hop into another run. This time I decided to do a run on hard because I want to see how the game scales difficulty up. Unfortunately, I tried Challenge Room, that is by far the most difficult one I see during all of my gameplay, and I die on level 1 for this run. So it seems like the game scales up difficulty by increasing monster density slightly and by giving you tougher enemies earlier on. I could be wrong about this, but I don't think so based on what I've seen. Enemies don't do more damage to you, and they also don't seem to take longer to kill, but it definitely seems like I was seeing enemies from later levels already on level 1. If I'm correct and this is how the difficulty scales up, then I have to say I'm a really big fan of this type of scaling. I don't want enemies to become bullet sponges, but instead have the moment-to-moment combat require more thought, skill, and precision. After that death, reported back out to the progression tree again, but I didn't kill any more bosses, so that means no more golden gems. So it's right into another run, and I learned that there's actually a quick restart feature from the progression screen. This is another thing that I really like a lot, eliminating that 10-second run to get the player instantly back into the action. The developers could have made you run past the neon graphics that they developed every time, but instead, once again, they put the player first and give you an option to bypass all of it and get straight back into another run. So now we start our third run. Not much is new in this run except bosses and guns, which we will discuss, but while you're seeing the gameplay, I want to take this time to discuss a few other aspects about the game. Most things up to now have been pretty black and white. Either I like them or I don't. However, the exploration of this game is something I'm really in the middle about. You learn very quickly the pattern of every level design. There'll be a challenge room, an item room, a shop, and a boss room on every level. Small part of me doesn't like the idea of this because you essentially know exactly what you're looking for on every level no matter what. However, another part of me really does like this for a few reasons. Firstly, in a game that focuses so much on RNG, in my opinion, I like this being a static thing. It gives me something I can rely on. Secondly, in practice, in all my runs except my last one where I was basically trying to speedrun, I found myself still exploring every room of every level. The reason for this was a bit of a gameplay loop. I was exploring rooms looking for coins to buy something from the store. I'd lose too much health to be comfortable fighting a boss, and then have to explore more rooms hoping for a health or shield drops. This brings us to another feature of the game that I am a big fan of, and that's not only that the game has teleporters, but also that they are never very far away from one another. This means you're never too far away from a teleporter yourself, and it will save you a bunch of time. Quite often, I'd spend gems opening doors or chests and come across one that I didn't have enough gems left to open. I'd then go explore, find some gems, and teleport back to the door to open it instead of having to spend the 2 minutes running back to the rooms I had already cleared. This is also especially true of the store. I'd find the store in a level, not have enough coins for what I wanted, go out, clear the level looking for coins, port back to the store and get what I wanted, and then go ahead and port straight to the boss. The level design of this game means that many paths will lead to a dead end, but never being far from a teleporter means that you'll spend 10 seconds getting back to one and porting to a new path instead of the minutes it would have taken you to run all the way back. A few of the roguelites I've played are very similar to this one, but they are very stingy with their teleporters. But for the third time, the developer saw something that would be annoying for players and designed the game in a way to alleviate that. This truly feels like a game that the developers actually play themselves. Oftentimes when you play a game, you can see mechanics and tell that whoever made it did it because it might have sounded like a good idea on paper, but they clearly never tried it out for themselves. Because if they had, they would have quickly seen that it's just not a fun mechanic. This game has very little, if any, of that at all. With that ran out of the way, we come to our next new weapon. This weapon is called the Silver Moon. It shoots a beam of purple light with a relatively short range, but it's drawn to enemies and attaches itself to them. It'll also stay attached even if you are aiming right at them, so it trades range for convenience by allowing the player to not need to focus on their aim so much, freeing up their attention to focus on dodging enemy attacks. The passive for this weapon will unlock all doors in an area, which to be fair does seem really good. You'll notice that I'm not going through every item we pick up, and that's because there are a lot of items in this game, and they do a lot of different things. Some drop bombs when you get hit, others make you fire more bullets at a time, some give you faster attack speed or make your character run faster. The point is that odds are in your first few hours you would see completely different items and pets than I do, because there are literally hundreds of different ones in this game. So we come to our first boss of this run, and this one we haven't seen before. It's Daniel, God of Gambling. True to his name, his first phase consists of him throwing clusters of cards at you, and phase 2 has him start throwing cards that lock onto you, while he also summons 3 large cards that you're not supposed to touch. One good thing and one bad thing I have to say about the bosses. I like the bosses are randomized each run, but I don't like how quickly and easily they seem to die. I get that these are essentially supposed to be mini bosses, but I'd like them to have a bit more of a challenge to them. I think the biggest issue is that they all seem to have really small health pools. So we fight our way over to the next door and get another new weapon called the Serpent Staff. This weapon shoots out projectiles that freeze in the air and form lasers connecting them. Honestly, it's a really cool concept, but I found it to be a little underwhelming. We then immediately find another weapon called Thunder. This is just an electric guitar that forms a ring of musical notes around you. Releasing the fire button makes them fly off in random direction. I ended up not using the weapon right now, but I did use it in a later run, and I could see someone liking this weapon if it suits their playstyle. Another good thing about the game I'd like to highlight is the minimap. Not only is it a well-designed minimap that shows you the layout of the level you've explored so far, it also shows you if there are any chests, diamonds, weapons, or coins in that room that you haven't picked up. So if you leave a room but forgot or missed something, the minimap will actually let you know and you can decide if it's important enough to go back for it. This is just another small touch that I think is an excellent design idea. Our next boss is Nick, God of Racing, and this is yet another boss we've yet to see. He's basically some sort of robot in a wheel. He rolls around the map trying to hit you and also drops spikes from the ceiling that you need to dodge that create dangerous spots on the floor for a few seconds. You aren't able to actually jump over him. You need to use the platforms in the middle of the room that spawn and despawn throughout the fight. His phase 2 has him speed up a lot, and that's where he kills us, bringing an end to another run. With that run done, we are able to buy an upgrade that's supposed to unlock some type of piano room, but I never found anything to do with this, so maybe someone in the comments can fill me in on exactly what this does. I did a few more runs to unlock the first character. I won't bore you with all the details of those runs since you understand the mechanic and the general gameplay loop of the game now, but we will skip to how it felt to play with our next character, Matt. Now, Matt starts with the same weapon as our original character, which was a little disappointing, but what makes Matt very fun to play is that he can roll with the left shift button. So it almost immediately feels way better when you're playing with Matt. Not only does it allow you to traverse the map much quicker, but it's also super useful for last minute dodges. Now for this run, since it was going to be the last one I was going to do before writing the script, I decided to just plow through as many levels as I could as quickly as possible. The only exploring would be looking for the boss door as quickly as possible. So we quickly come to Tommy, the god of plushies. He's a giant plushie with a crane hand from a claw game still attached to a head. He pulses, sending flying stars out in a big circle around him. He'll sometimes lower down and launch some avoidable bouncy balls at you. When he enrages, he loses the claw and starts bouncing around pulsing stars very quickly. We dodge his attacks, burn him down quickly, and we're moving on to level 2. So over the course of level 2, we not only get back to full health, but we also find 2 full shields and get a new weapon called Swallow. This is essentially a crossbow that shoots bolts and will bounce off walls. We then come to Tick, god of mobile videos. This is a brain with arms, hands, and what I believe are 2 phones as eyes. He pulsates pixels at you in a similar way Tommy pulsated stars. Also like Tommy, when he enrages, he charges at the player, pulsating much quicker now. He'll also send out clusters of pixels directly at the player, dodge stuff, stay alive, and then the boss dies, and we're on to level 3. We find the boss room of this level almost instantly, and it's Johnny, god of idols. I know you're probably thinking this is a boss we've already fought before, and when playing, so did I. But it's actually different. The boss we fought before was Kimmy, god of idols, where this one is Johnny. I'm not sure, but I think this might just be the hard mode version of the same god. Because phase 1 is exactly the same, but phase 2 is where things start to change. During phase 2, stars will shoot from the sides of the room that you need to dodge, and the boss will also rain down hearts that you need to dodge as well. It's around this point where I start gaining confidence, having a lot of fun, and realize that this game may have its hooks in me. Kill the boss, and it's on to level 4. Honestly, I expected this to be a quick run of the first few bosses, and then I would die around this time. But I start feeling like this run could be special, so we keep moving. Come across another new weapon I decided not to use, but it's called Forge. This weapon will shoot projectiles in a wider area the longer it's charged. I don't like it very much and decide to stick with what I have. We then immediately find another new weapon called Meteor. This weapon shoots a lot of low damage projectiles. In hindsight, I kinda wish I had stuck with the crossbow, but this weapon did seem really cool and kinda fit my playstyle. Come to the boss, and this time it's Hunt, god of racing, who looks exactly like Nick, god of racing. So I assume this is the hard mode version of him, and my hypothesis from before was correct that each boss has a normal mode and a hard mode. Still, we take him down with full health and shield to spare, and now I'm getting really confident. So here we go, back to level 5 for a second time. This time I'm determined to make it to the boss, so we start the level. Enemy density is immediately higher. There's way more to dodge. We take a few hits and make it to the boss with 2.5 hearts left. This boss is Argus, god of dark net. He isn't playing around. He immediately teleports away and summons 6 eyes that shoot projectiles at you before teleporting to new positions. And all at once, they start shooting laser beams up, down, left, and right. This is not an easy mechanic to dodge, but we managed to survive, kill all 6 eyes. The boss teleports back into the arena, and now we can finally fight him. He summons metal pipes at you that you only have a split second to dodge. We get as much damage as we can on him, but he's able to take us down and end both our run and the allotted time for this early game review of Neon Abyss. So I have a lot of thoughts about this game, so we're going to slow down on the narration a little bit, and we're going to break it down into categories. Combat. I put this one first because in a roguelite where you'll be doing runs over and over again, this is arguably the most important aspect of the game besides progression systems. And I have to say that Neon Abyss does not miss the mark with combat. The game feels like you took a typical bullet hell and you made it grow up a little bit. Rather than bullets filling the whole screen constantly, you need to watch attack patterns and focus on your positioning. The combat is a feeling of sophistication that I feel a lot of other bullet hells just don't. That's not a knock to them, but rather to praise Neon Abyss for being able to successfully put their own spin on an already established genre. One caveat to this is the gunplay never felt perfect, but with the amount of weapons available in the game, I really think this is just because in my short time, I never found what would be my favorite weapon. One last caveat, again, is that the bosses felt too easy. I really expected to hit walls with each boss, and that just never really happened with the mini-bosses. Hopefully this is just because I was so early on in the game, but I hope that the bosses definitely get a big jump in difficulty later on. Now onto progression systems. The game has an extensive progression tree that you use currency dropped off bosses to unlock. I love the idea of this currency because it promotes two styles of play. Do I rush bosses but not get as far with each run, or do I play it safe and get as many bosses as I can down with every run? Both are valid, and it's another example of how Neon Abyss focuses more on giving the player options to play their own way rather than forcing them to play a specific way intended by the developers. Between unlocking new perks for each run, new characters, watching your item and weapon vaults fill up as you discover a new one, the game definitely feels like it has enough progression to keep both speedrunners and completionists coming back for more over time. The one thing I would like to see is a progression system that allows you to unlock and choose new starting weapons. Perhaps something like that does exist in the game, but in my limited time with it, I never saw anything like that. So graphics, Neon Abyss is a very stylized and wonderful looking game. I love how everything outside the walls of your room is just darkness. It provides a great contrast to what your character is doing and what you're paying attention to. I will say I did expect more neon in Neon Abyss, but I wasn't disappointed in any ways with what I got. The bosses definitely brought a lot of that neon into the game, and overall the game is very easy on the eyes and shows that pixel art can still feel really good to play in 2023. So design. This is where there was a lot of good, but a little bit of bad as well. Many of the things I went over already, so I'll just summarize here. I love how there are so many ways the game puts the control into the player's hand. Whether it's enemy choosing, weapon choosing, teleporting, the list goes on, and this game does a great job of demonstrating what can happen when the fun is placed as a top priority for the game. I do think this game has too much RNG, or at least it has too much RNG locked behind only two currencies. I think you could add one more currency for all the gambling chests, doors, slot machines, etc., and it would have made the game feel way better. Overall, it's not too terrible, and you do kind of learn how to play around it. However, I still think this was an oversight, and I don't feel very good about this mechanic from a player standpoint. So, with all that being said, it's time to answer the big question. Neon Abyss, should you play it? Yes. Honestly, while watching my footage and writing the script, I was so tempted to hop back in and try to beat that level 5 boss. There's a lot to like about this game, and it makes me want to hop back in and play it even now. On top of that, it actually makes me want to try other games in this genre like Dead Cells. If a game can leave you wanting to try more games like it, then I think that's an indicator of a good game. So yes, I am going to keep playing this game, and I recommend if you are a fan of roguelites, or you've even never thought about trying roguelites, if you like Metroidvanias, if you like side-scrollers, bullet hells, anything close to this game, if you like it, give this game a try. It might be your type of game. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. This is by far my longest script and biggest project I've done so far. This video took a lot of work and many hours to get it out to you, so I would love it if you could please help me out by hitting the like button and consider subscribing. I have a lot of interesting video ideas for some videos coming up to keep the content from getting stale. Things like analysis by episode of full series, full game retrospectives, and even more. So if any of that's of interest to you, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would truly mean the world to me. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great week.